The observation deck was silent, empty, just how Admiral Cassandra Thorne preferred it. She stood alone before the reinforced viewport, hands clasped behind her back, gray hair pulled tight in a regulation bun. 63 years of life etched into the lines around her steel-colored eyes. 63 years of carrying the weight of 4,000 years of history. Behind her, invisible in the darkness of space, 12,000 warships hung in perfect formation. The largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. Black hulls that swallowed light. Weapons that bent the laws of physics. Technology born from desperation and refined through generations of singular purpose. They had come home, but home was dead. Through the viewport, Earth turned slowly. Brown, gray, lifeless. The clouds that should have been white were the color of ash. The oceans that should have sparkled blue were dried basins of cracked salt. The continents that should have been green were bare rocks scarred by radiation that had burned for 4 millennia. Cass had seen the images. Every human child saw them. But images were not the same as reality. Images did not convey the visceral horror of seeing your ancestral world reduced to a corpse. She did not weep. She had learned long ago that tears were a luxury commanders could not afford. Instead, she remembered. 55 years ago. New Terra, the hospital where her grandmother lay dying. 8-year-old Cassandra sat beside the bed, small hand clutching wrinkled fingers that had once been strong. Grandmother Alara was 80 years old, ancient by the standards of a harsh colony world. Her silver hair spread across the pillow like frost. Her eyes, once bright with fire, had dimmed to embers, but they still saw clearly. "You're going back someday," Alara whispered. Her voice was thread-thin, barely audible above the hum of medical equipment. "You know that, don't you, little Can? Back where grandmother, home, Earth, Sol 3, the world we fled." Young Cass frowned. "But Earth is dead. Teacher says so. Dead for 4,000 years. Dead is not the same as gone." Alara's grip tightened with surprising strength. "Listen to me carefully, child. I'm going to tell you something they don't teach in school. Something you need to carry for the rest of your life." The old woman's eyes drifted to the window, where New Terra's harsh orange sun cast long shadows across the hospital room. Outside the colony, city sprawled beneath a dome of reinforced polymer. Humanity's refuge. Humanity's cage. "I was there," Alara said. "Not on Earth. I was too young. But my grandmother was. She was one of the 47, one of the last to leave." 47 ships, Cass recited. Every child knew the number. 47 ships escaped before Earth burned. "Do you know why they burned it, Cassandra, our own world?" The child shook her head. "Because they were afraid. Different nations, different ideologies, different gods, all afraid of each other, all convinced that the only way to survive was to destroy the other side first." Alara's breath rattled. "And do you know who watched them do it?" Silence. The Concorde. 17 alien species who had achieved faster than light travel, who had built a civilization among the stars, who had observed humanity for 300 years and decided we were too dangerous, too violent, too primitive to contact. Young Cass's eyes widened. They watched. They just watched. They watched our cities burn. They watched our children die. They recorded everything for their archives. And when the 47 ships fled into the void, desperate and broken, the Concorde made a decision. Alara's voice dropped to barely a whisper. They decided to let us die, to forget about us, to pretend we never existed. That's not fair. No, it's not. The old woman's eyes returned to Cass's face. But here's what you need to understand, child. They were afraid of us for a reason. Humans are different from every other species they'd ever encountered. We live fast, we burn bright, we accomplish in decades what takes other species centuries. And when we're pushed to the edge, when we're desperate and cornered, we become something magnificent and terrible. She pulled Cass closer, voice urgent now. 4,000 years, Cassandra. 4,000 years we've survived in the darkness between galaxies, building, growing, becoming stronger. And someday someone will take a fleet back to Earth, back to that dead world, and the conquered will see us again. They'll see what we became while they pretended we didn't exist. Will we hurt them? Young Cass asked. Will we make them pay for what they did? And here Alara's grip became iron. Her fading eyes blazed with sudden intensity. No, do you hear me, Cassandra? No, because that's exactly what they expected. That's exactly what they feared. If we become monsters to punish those who abandoned us, then they were right about us all along. The old woman pulled herself up on the pillow with visible effort. Promise me something. If you're ever the one who goes back, if you're ever the one who faces them, you show them they were wrong. You show them that humans can be better than our worst moments, that we can choose mercy when we have the power to destroy, that we can plant trees under whose shade we'll never sit. I don't understand. You will, someday you will. Alara's strength faded. She sank back into the pillow, eyes closing. Promise me, little Cass. Promise me you'll go home. And promise me you won't become what they feared. I promise, grandmother. 3 hours later, Alara died. Her final words were a whisper that only young Cassandra heard. Show them what it means to be human. Admiral Cass Thorne opened her eyes. The memory faded. The observation deck returned to focus. Earth still turned below, still waiting. She was 63 now, the same age her grandmother had been when Cass was born. And she had perhaps 5 years left to keep her promise. The door behind her hissed open. Footsteps approached. Careful, measured. Someone who understood that the Admiral valued silence. You wanted to see me, ma'am. Cass did not turn. Status report, Lieutenant. Lieutenant Lyra Thorne moved to stand beside her grandmother, 25 years old, tall, dark hair cropped short in the military style, eyes the same steel gray as Cass's own. The Thorne bloodline ran true. All ships report ready, Admiral. Engineering confirms the atmospheric processors are calibrated. Medical has the rescue teams on standby, and Command wants to know when we're broadcasting. Soon, Lyra hesitated. Ma'am, permission to speak freely. Granted. Are you sure about this? The Council sent 3 separate requests for dialogue. Ambassador Zalira of the Selvani has been trying to establish contact for 6 days. If we just talk to them first, we might be able to. We're not talking to them. The words came flat, final. Lyra's jaw tightened. With respect, Admiral, we've come 4,000 light years. We have the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. We hold all the cards. Why not use that leverage to negotiate reparations, to demand accountability, to make them acknowledge what they did to us? Cass finally turned to look at her granddaughter. The girl was young, brilliant, passionate, everything a Thorne should be. But she didn't understand yet, not really. What do you think I want, Lieutenant? Justice, recognition? For them admit they were wrong. No, Lyra blinked. Then what? I want them to leave us alone. As Cass turned back to the viewport. I want 500 years of silence. 500 years to restore our world without interference. Without oversight. Without the Concord watching over our shoulders, judging whether we're civilized enough to join their little alliance. But grandmother, that's Admiral on the bridge, Lieutenant. Yes, ma'am. Lyra stiffened. Admiral, I don't understand. We have the power to make them pay, to force them to what? Apologize. Cass's voice carried an edge of ice. You think I want their apologies? You think I want to sit across a negotiation table from 17 species who let my ancestors burn and listen to them explain why they were justified, why they were afraid, why they made the hard choice? She shook her head slowly. I don't need their apologies, Lyra. I don't need their guilt. I need them gone. I need them to understand that Sol system is human territory now, and for the next 5 centuries we will restore Earth on our terms at our pace without anyone watching. And when we're done, when this world is green again, then maybe we'll consider whether the conquered deserves to know us. Lyra absorbed this in silence. Then quietly, great-grandmother Alara told you something. On her deathbed. You've never told me what. No, I haven't. Will you? Cass studied the young woman beside her. So much fire, so much righteous anger. She remembered feeling the same at 25. Remembered wanting to make the galaxy pay for every injustice, every abandonment, every death. Time had taught her differently. She made me promise 2 things, Cass said finally. First, to go home. Second, to not become what they feared. I've kept the first promise. I'm standing here looking at Earth. Now I have to keep the second, one by rejecting them completely. By showing them we don't need them, that we never needed them, that humanity survived and thrived without their help, without their guidance, without their permission. The greatest revenge is not destruction, Lieutenant. It's indifference. Lyra opened her mouth to respond, then stopped. Her eyes widened slightly as the understanding began to dawn. You're not here to conquer, she said slowly. You're here to dismiss them. Now you're learning. Cass allowed herself the ghost of a smile. Prepare for fleet-wide broadcast. All channels, every language in conquered space. I want every being in this galaxy to hear what I have to say. Yes, Admiral, when Cass checked the chronometer on her wrist. Give me 1 hour. I need to review the medical report first. Lyra's expression shifted. Concern flickered across her features. The medical report. Dismissed, Lieutenant. But dismissed. Lyra saluted sharply and left. The door hissed closed behind her. Alone again, Cass pulled a data tablet from her uniform pocket. The file was marked classified, command eyes only. She'd received it 3 days ago from the fleet's chief medical officer. She'd read it once. Reading it again wouldn't change anything, but she read it anyway. Medical assessment. Admiral Cassandra Thorne, subject female, 63 years, standard New Terra baseline, human diagnosis. Pulmonary cascade syndrome, stage 4 prognosis terminal. Standard treatment protocols ineffective. Enhanced cellular therapy shows 23% success rate in extending viable function by 18 to 24 months. Without treatment, estimated survival time, 4.8 to 5.2 years. With treatment, estimated survival time, 6.5 to 7.1 years. Recommendation: immediate commencement of therapy regimen. Full medical leave for initial 6-month intensive phase. Command duties to be transferred to designated successor during treatment period. Notes: subject has declined all treatment options. Request formal psychiatric evaluation to assess decision-making capacity. Subject has refused evaluation. Requesting override authority from Fleet Medical Command. Cass closed the file. 5 years, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. Earth's restoration would take 500. She would never see blue skies over the planet of her ancestors. Would never walk through green forests or swim in clean oceans. Would never breathe unfiltered air without a mask. The work she was about to begin would be completed by generations not yet born, and that was acceptable. More than acceptable. It was the point. Some things were bigger than one lifetime. Some promises took generations to fulfill. That's what her grandmother had understood. That's what she'd tried to teach an 8-year-old girl who didn't fully grasp the lesson until 5 decades later. Cass looked at Earth one more time. Then she straightened her uniform, smoothed back her gray hair, and walked to the command center. The bridge of the Remembrance was cathedral vast. Holographic displays floated in precise geometric arrays. 300 officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. At the center, the admiral's chair rose on a slightly elevated platform, giving her sightline to every corner of her domain. Cass settled into the chair. It fit her perfectly. She'd sat in it for 20 years. Communications, she said, was all channels. The officer at the comm station looked up sharply. Ma'am, all channels. Every frequency, every language. I want this broadcast to reach every corner of conquered space, from the galactic core to the rim colonies. If there's a being with the receiver, they hear this message. Yes, Admiral. Channels opening. You're live in 30 seconds. Cass took a slow breath. Around her, the bridge crew had stopped working. Every eye was on her. They knew this moment mattered. This was why they'd come. This was why 12,000 ships had crossed the void. 10 seconds, Admiral. She thought of Grandmother Alera, of the promise, of 500 years of work ahead, of the 5 years she had left. 5 seconds. She thought of Earth dead below. 3, 2, 1. You're live, Admiral. Cass looked directly into the holocamera. Her voice when she spoke was calm, measured, carrying the weight of 4 millennia. This is Admiral Cassandra Thorne of the human fleet, addressing the Galactic Concord, all 17 member species, and all those who follow your laws, share your civilization, enjoy your peace. She paused. Let the silence build. 4,000 years ago, you watched our world burn. You observed from hidden stations as nuclear fire consumed our cities. You recorded the deaths of billions for your archives. You sent no help, offered no refuge, made no attempt to intervene. Another pause. Shorter this time. When 47 ships escaped Earth's destruction, carrying the last survivors of our species, your Concord Council convened. You debated, you analyzed, you decided that humanity was too dangerous to contact, too violent, too primitive, too likely to disrupt your carefully maintained civilization. Her eyes never left the camera. So you chose to forget about us. You assumed we would die in the void, become nothing but a cautionary tale for your children, a lesson about what happens to species who cannot control their violent nature. Now her voice hardened, just slightly, just enough. You were wrong. She leaned forward. We did not die. We survived. We adapted. We grew strong in the darkness between galaxies. And now we have returned. Not as the desperate refugees you abandoned, but as something you never anticipated. Behind her, the main display activated. It showed the human fleet in full formation. 12,000 ships, perfect symmetry, overwhelming power. You see our ships, you scan our technology, you calculate our capabilities, and you're afraid. Good, you should be, because you're beginning to understand what you created when you left us to die. Cass stood. The camera followed her. But I'm not here to threaten you. I'm not here to demand reparations or force apologies or burn your worlds the way you let ours burn. I'm here to deliver terms, simple, non-negotiable. She raised one hand, began counting on her fingers. One Sol system is human territory, permanent, absolute. No Concord ships, no observers, no diplomatic missions, no contact of any kind. Second finger. Two all-data artifacts and records taken from Earth during your 4,000-year observation period will be returned within 30 days. No exceptions. Third finger. 3. You will leave us alone for 500 years, 5 centuries of complete isolation. We will restore our world. We will rebuild our civilization. We will remember what was taken from us, and we will do it without your interference. She lowered her hand. In 500 years, we will open communications. We will decide then whether the conquered is worthy of knowing us, whether you've learned enough to treat us as equals rather than subjects for study, whether you deserve a second chance. Her voice dropped, became almost gentle. But understand this, we don't need you. We never needed you. We survived your abandonment. We thrived without your guidance. We became powerful without your permission. The greatest insult I can deliver is not anger. It's indifference. Cass walked closer to the camera, close enough that her face filled the frame. You forgot about us. That was a mistake. But it was your mistake to make. Now we're choosing to forget about you. And that is our right to claim. She stepped back. Sol system is closed, effective immediately. Any conquered vessel that enters human space will be disabled and escorted out. Any attempt at contact will be ignored. Any violation of our sovereignty will be met with appropriate force. One final pause. You wanted to forget about us. We're granting your wish. See you in 500 years, if we decide you're worth seeing. She made a cutting gesture. The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. 300 officers sat frozen processing what they just witnessed. Their admiral had just dismissed the most powerful alliance in the galaxy like wayward children sent to their rooms. Then from somewhere in the back, someone started clapping. It spread. Within seconds, the entire bridge was on its feet, applauding, cheering. Some were crying, some were laughing. All of them understood that they just witnessed history. Cass let them have their moment. Then she raised a hand. Silence returned immediately. Back to work, she said quietly. We have 500 years of restoration to begin. The crew returned to their stations. Discipline reasserted itself. But the energy had changed. Something fundamental had shifted. Lyra approached from her position at the tactical console. Her eyes were bright, proud. That was magnificent, she said softly. That was necessary. Cass moved back to her command chair. Now we wait for their response. You think they'll accept? They don't have a choice. They abandoned us once. They can do it again. This time it's on our terms. For 6 hours there was silence. No response from the Concorde. No transmissions. No attempted contact. Then finally a single message arrived. Cass read it alone in her quarters. From Envoy Zalira Silvani Collective on behalf of Galactic Concord Council to Admiral Cassandra Thorne, Human Fleet Command. Subject terms acknowledged. Your terms are accepted. Sol system is recognized as sovereign human territory. All artifacts will be returned within the specified time frame. Concord vessels will maintain minimum safe distance beyond your designated border. We wish you success in your restoration efforts. We will await contact in 500 years. Cass read it 3 times. Then she deleted it. She sat at her desk alone with her thoughts. Outside the viewport, Earth turned. Still waiting. 500 years of work. 5 years of life. The mathematics didn't favor Kerr, but that had never been the point. A soft chime at her door. Enter. Lyra stepped inside. No longer in uniform, just a young woman visiting her grandmother in off-duty hours. The pretense of military formality dropped. They accepted, Cass said before Lyra could ask. I heard. The whole fleet heard. Lyra sat in the chair across from the desk. 500 years of isolation. That's a long time. It's necessary. Why? The young woman leaned forward. I understand making a statement, But 500 years. We could begin restoration and still maintain limited contact. We could build alliances. We could give them the chance to interfere. Cass shook her head. No, we do this alone. We prove we can do this alone. That's the only way they'll ever truly respect us. Lyra was quiet for a moment. Then you're dying. Cass looked up sharply. Excuse me? The medical report, I accessed it. Don't be angry. As your XO, I have override authority for command fitness evaluations. That report was classified. And you declined treatment. Lyra's voice cracked slightly. 5 years, maybe less, and you're refusing the only therapy that might extend it. The therapy would require 6 months of medical leave, another year of reduced capacity. That's time Earth doesn't have. Earth has 500 years. I don't. Cass stood, moved to the viewport. I have 5 years, maybe a little more. Just enough time to see the atmospheric processors deployed. Just enough time to witness the first phase of restoration begin. Just enough time to make sure this project continues after I'm gone. She turned to face her granddaughter. If I take the treatment, I extend my life by 2 years. 2 years of weakness while my body fights the therapy. 2 years of uncertainty while the fleet watches their admiral waste away. 2 years of questions about my fitness for command. She shook her head. No, I stay strong, I stay sharp. I lead for 5 years, and then I hand command to someone ready to continue the work. To me, Lyra whispered. To you. The young woman's eyes widened. I'm 25. I'm not ready for... You'll be 30 when I die, and you'll be ready because I'll spend the next 5 years making sure of it, teaching you everything I know, preparing you to carry this burden for the next 50, 60 years of your life. Cass walked over, placed both hands on Lyra's shoulders. This is how it works, child. We plant trees. We'll never see them grow to full height, but we make sure the next generation can, and they make sure the generation after them can. And on until finally 500 years from now, someone stands on a green hill and breathes air that doesn't need filtering. That's the promise. That's the work. Lyra's face crumpled. She pulled her grandmother into a fierce embrace. I don't want you to die. I know, Cass held her tightly, but wanting doesn't change reality. We work with what we have, and what we have is 5 years. Let's make them count. They stood like that for a long moment. 2 women, 2 generations, both carrying the weight of promises made long ago. Finally, they separated. Lyra wiped her eyes, straightened. The moment of vulnerability passed. What's our next move? She asked, voice steadying. We begin atmospheric processing tomorrow. I want the first bacterial colonies deployed within 72 hours. We'll set up primary base on the surface within... The comm panel on Cass's desk chimed. Urgent priority. Cass touched the activation panel. Thorn, Admiral, this is Bridge Communications. We're receiving a transmission, direct, personal, requesting private channel with you specifically. Source, identification codes, mark it as Warlord Kravos of the Morthani Empire. Cass and Lyra exchanged glances. The Morthani, the warrior species, the ones who had mobilized their fleet when humanity first appeared. Audio only, Cass said. Root it here. A moment of static, then a voice, deep, rough, carrying the weight of heavy gravity vocal cords. Admiral Thorn, I am Warlord Kravos, Supreme Commander of the Morthani 5th Battle Group. We need to speak. I'm listening. Not over open channels. This requires private communication, face-to-face if possible. That's not possible. State your business, Warlord. A pause, then. Very well, I'll be direct. Your species appeared from nowhere with overwhelming force. You dismissed the entire Concord with a single transmission. You claim sovereign right to an entire star system, and you expect us all to simply accept this. Your point. My point, Admiral, is that the Morthani do not accept dismissals. We are warriors. We have protected Concord's space for 3,000 years. We do not simply step aside because a new species arrives and makes demands. Cass's expression hardened. Are you threatening me, Warlord? I'm offering you an opportunity. Another pause. The Morthani have an ancient tradition. When disputes cannot be resolved through diplomacy, we resolve them through honorable combat. Single ship, single commander. A test of skill and courage. You're challenging me to a duel. I'm offering you the chance to prove humanity deserves the respect you demand. Face me, ship to ship. If you win, the Morthani will honor your sovereignty without question. If I win, you negotiate with the conquered like civilized beings instead of making unilateral demands. Lyra was already shaking her head frantically, mouthing the word no over and over. Cass ignored her. Where and when? What? Krivos sounded surprised. You accept? I asked where and when, Warlord. I assume you have coordinates in mind. Neutral space. Coordinates I'm transmitting now. 24 hours from this moment. Single ship. No support vessels within 100,000 kilometers. Energy weapons only. First to disable their opponent's primary systems wins. Understood. I'll be there. Admiral Thorne, I must warn you. I have commanded warships for 75 of your years. I have won 412 combat engagements. I have never lost a duel. You are brave to accept, but this is not bravery. This is suicide. Then I'll see you tomorrow, Warlord. Don't be late. Cass cut the transmission. Lyra exploded. Have you lost your mind? He's baiting you. This is obviously a trap. Of course it's a trap. Then why did you accept? Cass smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Because he thinks I'm a fool. He thinks humanity is a species of primitive warmongers who got lucky with technology. He thinks I'll walk into his trap, get destroyed, and prove to the conquered that humans haven't changed in 4,000 years. She moved to her desk, began pulling up star charts. But here's what Warlord Krivos doesn't understand. I'm 63 years old. I'm dying, and I have nothing left to prove to anyone except myself. If he wants to test me, I'll show him exactly what 4,000 years of human evolution can accomplish. Grandmother, please. Admiral, Cass corrected gently. On duty, it's Admiral, and you're dismissed, Lieutenant. Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be interesting. Lyra stood frozen for a moment. Then she saluted sharply, spun on her heel, and left. Alone again, Cass studied the coordinates Krivos had transmitted. Neutral space. Far from any system. Perfect place for an ambush. She pulled up sensor data on the Morthani 5th Battle Group, their typical tactics, their ship configurations, their commander's history. 412 victories. Impressive. But Krivos had never faced a human before, had never faced someone who had spent their entire life preparing for a moment that would come after they were gone, had never faced someone who understood that victory and survival were not the same thing. Cass worked through the night, running simulations, planning contingencies, preparing for what would come. Not the duel. That was secondary. Preparing for the trap, and for what she would do when it sprung. 20 hours later, the shuttle carried her to the Valkyrie, a small ship by fleet standards, single pilot capable, fast, maneuverable, armed with humanity's most advanced weapon systems. Lyra met her at the airlock. One final attempt. Let me go instead, or let me come with you, please. No, why not? Cass paused at the threshold, looked back at her granddaughter, this brilliant, passionate, stubborn young woman who would carry the burden when she was gone. Because you need to live, she said simply. You need to be here in 5 years when I'm not. You need to finish what we're starting, and you can't do that if you're dead in a pointless duel with a Morthani warlord. Then neither should you. I'm dying anyway, Lyra. I can die in a medical bay in 5 years, or I can die proving a point tomorrow. I know which one matters more. She stepped through the airlock. It sealed behind her. The Valkyrie launched 30 minutes later, alone, headed for neutral space, headed for a duel she knew was a trap. But Cassandra Thorne had not survived 63 years of hard choices by being naive. She knew what Krivos intended. Knew that honorable duel was a pretense. Knew that when she arrived at those coordinates, she'd face not one ship, but an entire battle group. And she was counting on it. Because Krivos needed to learn something. The Concord needed to learn something. The entire galaxy needed to understand what it meant when humans made a promise. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. Don't become what they fear. Show them they were wrong. Cass checked her weapon systems, charged her shields, set her course. 24 hours from now, the galaxy would learn whether Cassandra Thorne was a fool or a legend. Either way, she'd keep her promise. The Valkyrie slipped into faster than light, leaving Earth behind in the darkness. 500 years of restoration ahead. 5 years of life remaining, and one very important lesson to teach. The trap was waiting. Cass flew toward it with eyes wide open, because sometimes the only way to spring a trap was to walk into it deliberately and survive. The coordinates Warlord Krivos had transmitted led to a region of space so empty it had no designation. No stars within 3 light years, no planets, no dust clouds, just the infinite dark between galaxies. Perfect place for a duel. Perfect place for an ambush. Cass dropped the Valkyrie out of faster than light exactly on time. The small ship's sensors swept the void painting tactical data across her viewport. For 30 seconds, there was nothing. Just empty space and the faint background radiation left over from the universe's birth. Then the contacts appeared. One ship, two, 5, 20, 50. Cass's jaw tightened. The sensor count climbed past 100 and stopped at 143. 143 Morthani warships materialized from stealth positions, forming a sphere around her location. Each one massive, each one bristling with weapons, each one positioning for optimal firing solution. The Valkyrie's tactical computer assessed the situation in milliseconds and delivered its verdict in cold, emotionless text: survival probability, 0%. Cass studied the formation with professional detachment. Classic Morthani encirclement. No escape vector, overlapping fields of fire, coordinated targeting protocols, textbook execution. They'd been waiting here for hours, maybe days. This was never going to be a duel. A transmission request blinked on her comm panel. She accepted it. Warlord Krivos's face appeared on her screen. He was massive even for a Morthani. Nearly 3 meters tall, his gray armored hide scarred from decades of combat. His eyes were the color of old iron, cold, calculating, utterly without mercy. Admiral Thorne, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. You came alone. I'm almost disappointed. I expected you to bring support vessels, to show some tactical sense. You invited me to a dual warlord. I honored the terms. Single ship, no support. Krevos's expression didn't change. And you believed me. How naive. How perfectly predictably human. Around the Valkyrie, weapon systems activated across 143 warships. Energy signatures spiked. Targeting locks engaged. Let me explain something about the Morthani Admiral. We are warriors. We respect strength. We honor courage. But we do not tolerate arrogance. He leaned forward. You dismissed the entire galactic conquered. You made demands as if you had the right. You treated civilizations that have existed for millennia like children to be scolded. Is there a point to this speech? The point is that you need to learn your place. Humanity is one species, one fleet, one system. The Concord is 17 species, 15,000 star systems, and a civilization older than your recorded history. You will negotiate. You will compromise. You will show proper respect. Krivos gestured, and the weapons array around the Valkyrie hummed with building power. Or I will destroy you here, and then I will take my fleet to Earth, and I will finish what your ancestors started when they burned their own world. Silence filled the small cockpit. Cass sat perfectly still, hands resting on the flight controls. Her heart rate had not increased. Her breathing remained steady. 63 years of command had taught her that panic was a choice, and she chose differently. You won't destroy me, warlord. Krivos's eyes narrowed. And why not? Because you brought 143 ships to kill one. That tells me everything I need to know about how much you fear us. You could have brought 10 ships, 20, 50 would have been overwhelming force. But you brought everything you could mobilize on short notice. She smiled. It did not reach her eyes. You're terrified, Krivos. You're terrified that if you give humanity even the smallest chance, we'll do to the Morthani what we did to our own planet. You're terrified that you're right to be terrified, and that terror makes you predictable. Enough talk. Krivos's hand moved toward a control panel. You had your chance for... Cass cut the transmission. Her hands flew across the Valkyrie's controls. The small ship's engines screamed to full power. Cass didn't try to break the encirclement. That was impossible. Instead, she accelerated directly toward the nearest Morthani vessel, closing the distance at speeds that made her ship shudder. The Morthani formation hesitated for 3 critical seconds. They'd expected retreat, expected evasive maneuvers, expected anything except a direct assault. 3 seconds was enough. The Valkyrie's weapons opened fire at point-blank range. Concentrated energy beams punched through the Morthani ship's shields carved into its hull, found its reactor core. The massive warship exploded in a sphere of white fire. Cass was already moving, already diving through the debris field, already targeting the next ship. But 142 was still overwhelming odds. The Morthani recovered from their surprise. Their formation tightened. Weapons fire converged on the Valkyrie from every direction. Cass's shields flared, held began to buckle. She twisted the ship through impossible maneuvers. Dodged 3 salvos. 5. 10. But there was nowhere to go. No escape. The sphere of Morthani warships tightened like a closing fist. A direct hit to her port engine. Alarm shrieked. The Valkyrie spun out of control. Cass fought the controls, regained stability, fired back, damaged another Morthani ship. Not enough. Another hit. Starboard shields collapsed. Hull breach in Section 4. Emergency bulkhead sealed. Life support flickered. The tactical computer updated its assessment. Hull integrity at 40%. Recommend immediate surrender. Cass ignored it. Poured everything into the engines. Tried to break through the formation. Almost made it. Then a Morthani heavy cruiser dropped directly into her path and fired at near-zero range. The impact threw Cass against her restraints hard enough to crack ribs. The Valkyrie's main systems went dark. Emergency power kicked in, casting everything in red emergency lighting. She tasted blood. Ishain, her vision blurred. The cockpit was filled with smoke and the acrid smell of burning circuits. Through the viewport, 141 Morthani ships surrounded her dying vessel. Weapons still hot, all pointed at her. Krevos's transmission request came through again. Cass accepted it with a shaking hand. The warlord's face appeared, triumphant, satisfied. "Surrender, Admiral, you've lost." Cass wiped blood from her mouth. "Have I? Your ship is crippled. Your shields are gone. One more salvo, and you're dead. Surrender. I'll grant you the honor of survival. And then what I negotiate, I compromise, I show proper respect." Yes, exactly that. Cass looked at the tactical display, at the 141 ships, at her own crippled vessel barely holding together. Then she looked past them, at the star field beyond, at the direction of home. "No," she said quietly. Kravos leaned forward. "What did you say?" "I said no, I won't surrender, I won't negotiate, and I certainly won't show respect to someone who uses 100 ships to ambush one. Then you'll die." "Maybe." Cass's hands moved across the controls, but not here and not alone. Her fingers found the emergency faster-than-light initialization sequence. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal. Engaging FTL with a damaged ship could tear the Valkyrie apart, could scatter her atoms across a dozen light-years. But staying here was certain death. She punched the activation. "No," Krevos shouted. "All ships fire now." 141 warships opened fire simultaneously. The Valkyrie's FTL drive engaged a split second before the energy storm arrived. Reality twisted. Space folded. The universe turned inside out. Then everything went black. Cass woke to pain, sharp, immediate. Her ribs were definitely broken. Her left arm was dislocated at the shoulder. Blood ran from a gash across her forehead, filling her left eye. But she was alive. The Valkyrie's emergency systems were screaming warnings in a dozen different languages. Hull breaches in 5 sections. Life support at 20% capacity. Engines offline. Weapons offline. Communications offline. But they were moving. Somehow, impossibly, the emergency FTL jump had worked. Cass pulled herself upright in her seat, fighting waves of nausea. She needed to know where they were. Needed to assess whether she'd escaped or simply died more slowly. The navigation computer flickered to life, displayed their position. Cass's remaining good eye widened. They were in the Sol system. The emergency jump had carried them home, and they were not alone. Behind the crippled Valkyrie, faster-than-light wakes bloomed like deadly flowers. 141 Morthani ships dropped into normal space in pursuit. Krevos had followed her. Cass tried to signal the fleet, tried to warn them. But her communications were dead. She was alone, crippled, dying. The Morthani formation spread out, weapons hot, advancing on Earth. Then space itself seemed to ignite. 12,000 human warships powered up from standby mode. They'd been waiting in the outer system, dispersed in holding patterns. Now they converged with terrifying speed and precision. Lyra's voice cut through the static on an emergency channel. "Admiral, we're reading your transponder. Are you alive?" Cass's throat was too raw to speak. She managed to key the affirmative signal. "Thank God. We're moving to intercept the Morthani fleet. Just hold on, we'll—" "No." Cass forced the word out through damaged vocal cords. "Stand down." "What, Admiral? They're advancing on Earth. They're in weapons range." "I said stand down, Lieutenant. That's an order." "But—" "Now, silence on the channel." Then reluctantly, "Yes, Admiral. Fleet standing down. Defensive posture only." The human ships halted their advance, held position between the Morthani fleet and Earth. Shields up. Weapons ready, but not firing. Krevos's transmission arrived moments later, his face on her damaged screen. Rage barely contained behind iron discipline. "You ran. like a coward, like a prey animal fleeing the hunt. I retreated, Cass corrected. There's a difference. And now you're in my territory, Warlord, in human space, surrounded by 12,000 ships that outclass yours in every category. She could see him calculating, see the tactical computer behind his eyes running the numbers. 141 Morthani ships versus 12,000 human vessels. In open space, the Morthani might have had a chance. Their ships were tough, their weapons proven over centuries of warfare. But here, deep in the Sol system, surrounded by humanity's entire fleet, with Earth itself at their backs, the mathematics were brutal and final. If you wanted to destroy us, Kravos said slowly, you would have already fired. Correct. Then what do you want? Cass looked past him. Through her viewport, Earth hung in the distance, still waiting. I want you to learn a lesson, Warlord. The same lesson the Concord needed to learn. But I can't teach it with words. Words are cheap, actions matter. She checked her navigation. The Valkyrie was still drifting on inertia-damaged engines, unable to correct course. She plotted the trajectory and felt something cold settle in her chest. They were heading directly toward Earth's upper atmosphere, toward the radiation clouds that still choked the dead planet. If she couldn't regain engine control, she'd burn up on entry. Perfect. Lyra, she transmitted on the command channel. How close can you get a recovery shuttle to my position? We can be there in 8 minutes, Admiral, but the Morthani are between us and you. If we move forward, it could trigger a firefight. I understand, don't move. I'll come to you. How your engines are? Lyra's voice caught as she processed the same trajectory data Cass was seeing. No, grandmother, you can't. You'll never make it through the radiation clouds. Even if you survive atmospheric entry, the toxins will kill you in minutes. I've survived worse odds today. I'm sending the shuttle. I'm ordering it to belay that order, Lieutenant. That's final. Cass killed the transmission before Lyra could argue further. She turned her attention back to Kravos. Watch carefully, Warlord. What I'm about to do next is important. She fired the Valkyrie's maneuvering thrusters. Not to escape, not to evade. She aimed the crippled ship directly at Earth, directly at the radiation-soaked atmosphere. Kravos's expression shifted. Confusion, then understanding, then something that might have been respect. You're insane. No, I'm committed. Cass's hands moved across controls that barely responded. You wanted to see human nature, Kravos. You wanted to know what we're capable of. Watch this. The Valkyrie entered Earth's upper atmosphere at speeds that made the hull scream. Atmospheric friction turned the viewport white-hot. Temperature warnings blared. The ship's remaining shields struggled to compensate. Cass held course, dove deeper. The radiation clouds closed around her like toxic fog. Sensors went wild. The air scrubbers in her suit began filtering desperately, trying to keep the poison out. Behind her, she knew Kravos and his fleet were watching. The entire human fleet was watching. Everyone was waiting to see what happened next. Cass pulled up at the last possible moment. The Valkyrie skimmed across the edge of the thermosphere, trailing superheated plasma. She'd lost visual, lost most sensors, was flying on instruments and instinct. But she knew these radiation patterns, had studied them for months. The legacy of 4,000-year-old nuclear war created unique electromagnetic signatures, patterns, flows, rivers of radioactive decay moving through the upper atmosphere. She'd read them, learned them, and now she used them. The Valkyrie banked hard, riding a current of ionized particles. The radiation was so intense it was visible, casting everything in sickly green light. Her suit's rad counter clicked frantically. She was absorbing lethal doses every second. Didn't matter. She wasn't planning to live through this anyway. Behind her, Kravos had made a decision. The Morthani fleet advanced, not toward the human ships, toward Earth, toward her. Foolish, Cass muttered, predictably foolish. She led them deeper. The Morthani ships followed, their shields flaring as they entered the radiation zone, their sensors struggling, their systems degrading. Cass knew these clouds, had studied every toxic current, every radioactive dead zone, every killing field left over from humanity's darkest day. The Morthani did not. She led them into a pocket of concentrated decay, a region where old warheads had detonated in a cluster, creating a permanent storm of ionized particles. The radiation spiked to levels that would kill an unprotected human in seconds. The Morthani shields began to fail. One by one, their ships lost power. Systems crashed, engines died. They drifted, helpless, caught in the same poison that had killed Earth 4,000 years ago. Kravos' ship was last to succumb. Cass watched on her failing sensors as his massive flagship's shields collapsed, as his weapons went dark, as his engines stuttered and died. Then she brought the Valkyrie around, limped through the radiation on thrusters barely capable of maintaining position. She found Kravos's ship drifting, disabled but intact. Her communications crackled to life, emergency power only. Kravos, can you hear me? Silence, then I hear you. Your fleet is disabled. Your ships are dying in Earth's radiation. Your crews are absorbing fatal doses. You have perhaps 30 minutes before the exposure becomes irreversible. I know. I'm going to save you. For the first time, Kravos's voice carried something other than arrogance. What? I'm going to signal my fleet. They'll send rescue ships, medical teams. They'll pull your people out of the radiation, treat them, save as many as possible. Why? Cass looked at Earth through her viewport, at the world that had killed its own children, at the poison that still lingered, still deadly, still a reminder of what humanity had been. Because that's what my grandmother would have done. Because that's what it means to be human. We don't kill defeated enemies. We save them, even when they don't deserve it, especially when they don't deserve it. She opened the fleet channel. Lyra, send medical rescue teams into the radiation zone. All Morthani ships, full decontamination protocols. Save everyone you can. Admiral, the radiation levels. Our crews have better protection, better training. We've been preparing to work in this environment for years. We can do this. They can't, so we do it. A pause, then, yes, Admiral, rescue teams deploying now. Cass watched on her sensors as human ships moved into the radiation clouds. Small, fast vessels designed for exactly this kind of a recovery. They locked onto Morthani ships, attached umbilical connections, began extracting crews. It took 3 hours. 3 hours while Cass's Valkyrie drifted, while her suit absorbed radiation that would kill her in days, maybe hours, while her broken body grew weaker and her vision grew darker. But she stayed conscious, stayed on the command channel, coordinated the rescue, made sure every Morthani warrior was saved. Finally, Lyra's voice came through. Admiral, all survivors recovered. 3,200 Morthani personnel. 47 were already dead from radiation exposure. The rest are in medical. Prognosis is good for most of them. And Kravos, alive, in isolation, under guard. He's asking to speak with you. Patch him through. The warlord's face appeared. He looked different now, smaller somehow. The arrogance had been burned away by radiation and defeat. What remained was something raw and uncertain. You saved us. Yes. Why? Cass thought about her grandmother, about the promise, about 8-year-old Cassandra sitting beside a dying woman who taught her what it meant to be human. Because you needed to understand something, Kravos. You thought humans were primitive, violent, dangerous. And you were right. We are all those things. Our history proves it. Earth proves it. She gestured at the radiation clouds outside. But we're also capable of growth, of choosing to be better than our worst impulses. You ambushed me with 141 ships. I could have destroyed all of you when you followed me here. Instead, I led you into a trap that didn't kill you, just disabled you, and then I saved you. Kravos was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, quieter. I have fought for 75 years. I have won 412 battles. I have killed thousands of enemies. And I have never in all that time had an enemy save my life after defeating me. Then you've never fought humans before. No, I have not. He bowed his head slightly, a Morthani gesture of respect she'd read about but never seen. I was wrong about your species, Admiral Thorne. I was wrong about you. Will you leave Sol system now? Yes, as soon as our ships are repaired enough to travel. And will you honor the 500 years of isolation I demanded? Kravos met her eyes. I will do more than that, Admiral. I will return to the Concord Council and tell them what happened here. I will tell them that humanity defeated the Morthani 5th Battle Group without firing a shot, that you showed mercy when you could have shown destruction, that you saved your enemies when you could have let them die. He paused. I will tell them that the Concord was wrong to abandon you, that we were fools to fear you, that you deserve not just isolation but respect. Cass nodded slowly. Thank you, Warlord. No, thank you, Admiral. He glanced away at something off-screen. My medical officer tells me you absorbed lethal radiation doses, that you're dying. I was already dying, terminal illness. 5 years at most. Cass's voice was steady. This just moves up the timeline. The radiation I absorbed was extreme, Beyond what our medical technology can heal, I have days, maybe a week, not the years I would have had. Then I am honored to have fought you, Cassandra Thorne, and I am ashamed that I tried to kill someone who taught me more about honor in 3 hours than I learned in 75 years of warfare. The transmission ended. Lyra's voice immediately replaced it. Grandmother, we're coming to get you. The rescue shuttle is on approach. Good, I could use a hospital bed right about now. The medical team is standing by. They'll decontaminate you, treat the radiation exposure, fix your broken ribs, your shoulder, Lyra. Yes. I need you to understand something. The radiation I absorbed was extreme, beyond what our medical technology can heal. I have days, maybe a week, not years. Silence on the channel. Cass could imagine Lyra's face. The denial, the grief, the desperate refusal to accept reality. No, no, we have treatments. We have palliative care. We have ways to make me comfortable while I die. That's all. And that's enough. The rescue shuttle appeared, locked onto the Valkyrie's hull. Emergency medical teams in full radiation suits entered through the airlock. They found Cass still in the pilot's seat, still conscious, still in command. They transported her to the Remembrance's medical bay, decontaminated her as much as possible, set her broken bones, treated her wounds, gave her drugs to manage the pain, but they couldn't save her. Everyone knew it. The radiation had done too much damage. Her cells were dying, her organs were failing. She had perhaps 72 hours. Lyra sat beside the bed, held her grandmother's hand, refused to leave. You didn't have to do it, the young woman whispered. You could have destroyed them from a distance, could have let them die in the radiation, could have proven Kravos right about us. Cass's voice was weak but clear. Could have shown the galaxy that humans are exactly what they feared. Violent, merciless, dangerous. She squeezed Lyra's hand with what little strength remained. Instead, I showed them something else, something they never expected. I showed them that we're strong enough to choose mercy, wise enough to save our enemies, human enough to remember that every life matters, even when it costs your own life, especially then. Cass smiled. It was tired but genuine. That's the lesson, child. That's what I needed to teach them. That humanity isn't defined by our capacity for destruction. We're defined by our capacity for forgiveness. A soft chime at the medical bay door. A visitor request. Lyra checked the security panel and frowned. It's Envoy Zalira, the Selvani representative. She's been trying to visit for 6 hours. Let her in. But you need rest. Let her in, Lyra. This is important. The young lieutenant stepped aside. The door opened. Envoy Zalira entered hesitantly. She was smaller than Cass expected. Silver skin reflecting the medical bay's soft lighting. Forearms held in a posture that the cultural database identified as deep respect or apology. Large black eyes focused on Cass with something that looked like sorrow. Admiral Thorne, I am Envoy Zalira of the Selvani Collective. On behalf of the Galactic Concord, I don't want your apology, Cass interrupted gently. I told you, 500 years of isolation, no contact. I understand, but I needed to see you to tell you something in person. Then speak. Zalira moved closer to the bed, her 4 hands clasped together in a gesture that seemed almost like prayer. 4,000 years ago, my ancestors watched your world burn. They recorded it, studied it, and they made a choice to do nothing, to let you die, to forget you existed. Her voice was soft, pained. I have read their reports, their justifications, their fears, and I am ashamed. What they did was wrong, cowardly, unforgivable. She looked directly at Cass. But you, Admiral, you have done something remarkable. You came back. You had every right to destroy us, every justification for revenge, and instead you asked only to be left alone. You showed mercy to the Morthani who ambushed you. You saved enemies who tried to kill you. Zalira's voice cracked slightly. You have taught the Concord more about civilization in 3 days than we learned in 3,000 years. And I needed you to know that. I needed you to hear it from one of us before you... She stopped. Before your time is finished. Cass studied the alien woman, saw genuine remorse in those large dark eyes, genuine respect. Thank you, Envoy, but I need you to understand something. I didn't do this for the Conquered. I didn't do it to teach you lessons or earn your respect. Then why? I did it for her. Cass nodded at Lyra. For my granddaughter and the generations that will come after. I did it so that when they grow up, when they restore Earth and build a civilization among the stars, they can do it without the burden of hatred, without the weight of vengeance. She closed her eyes briefly. The drugs were making her tired. I did it because my grandmother taught me something important. Some things are bigger than one lifetime. Some promises take generations to keep. This is my tree envoy. 500 years from now, my descendants will live in its shade, and they'll know that their ancestor chose mercy over hatred, forgiveness over revenge, future over past. Zalira bowed deeply, all four arms extended in a Salvani gesture of profound respect. Then I will honor your wishes, Admiral. 500 years of isolation. No contact, no interference. We will wait. And when your descendants are ready, if they choose to speak with us, we will listen with humility. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. May I ask one question? Yes. In 500 years, when your people open communications, what will they say to us? Cass smiled. I don't know, Envoy. That's for them to decide. But I hope they'll say that humanity remembers everything and that we chose what to do with those memories. Zalira nodded. Then she left. Lyra waited until the door closed. She seemed sincere. She was, but sincerity doesn't change the past. It only affects the future, and the future belongs to you, not me. Grandmother Admiral, Cass corrected gently, for a few more hours at least, and I need you to listen carefully to what I'm about to say. Lyra straightened, the grief on her face hardened into professional attention. Kravos and his fleet will leave within 12 hours. Let them go. No pursuit, no final insults. Just let them leave. Yes, Admiral. The atmospheric processors will begin deployment tomorrow. You'll oversee the initial phase. Follow the schedule we created. Don't rush, don't cut corners. This work takes centuries. There's no prize for finishing early. Understood. In approximately 48 hours, I will die. You will assume command of the fleet. Your first order will be to hold a memorial service. Keep it simple. I don't want ceremony, just acknowledgement. Lyra's composure cracked slightly. Tears formed in her eyes. Your second order will be to move the fleet to permanent stations around Earth. You will begin the long work of restoration. You will live on this ship for the next 30 years, overseeing every phase personally. 30 years. At least, maybe 40. You're 25 now. You'll be 65 when the first phase completes. Old enough to understand what I understood at 63. That some things matter more than one lifetime. Cass reached out with her good hand, touched Lyra's face. You'll do it better than I would have. You'll see progress I'll never witness. You'll make decisions I can't imagine. And you'll pass this responsibility to the next generation when your time comes. I'm not ready. No one ever is, but you're a thorn. We're never ready, and we do it anyway. The hours passed. Cass's condition deteriorated. Her breathing grew shallow, her heartbeat irregular. The medical staff did what they could to keep her comfortable. Lyra never left her side. 71 hours after the rescue, Admiral Cassandra Thorne opened her eyes one final time. She looked at her granddaughter, at the young woman who would carry the burden forward. Lyra, I'm here. The promise, remember the promise. I will, I promise. Good. Cass smiled. Good. Now go. You have work to do. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are. That's an order, Lieutenant. Go to the observation deck. Look at Earth. Start planning tomorrow. Start building the future. Lyra stood slowly, reluctantly, tears streaming down her face. She saluted. Sharp. Perfect. One final gesture of respect to the woman who had taught her everything. Cass returned the salute with her remaining strength. Then Lyra turned and left. Alone in the medical bay surrounded by machines and monitors, Admiral Cassandra Thorne looked out the viewport at Earth. At the dead world she would never see bloom. At the promise she would never see fulfilled. But it didn't matter. She'd done her part. Planted her tree, showed the galaxy what it meant to choose mercy over vengeance. The rest was up to those who came after. Her eyes closed, her breathing stopped, her heart beat one final time, and in the silence that followed, 12,000 ships held their position around Earth, waiting, ready to begin 500 years of patient, determined restoration. Admiral Cassandra Thorne was gone, but her legacy was just beginning. The memorial service was held in the observation deck, where Admiral Cassandra Thorne had spent her final conscious hours before the duel. The same viewport, the same stars, the same view of Earth still waiting. 300 officers filled the space, silent, standing at attention. Each had served under Cass. Each had believed in her vision. Each now faced the reality that she would never see it fulfilled. Lieutenant Lyra Thorne stood at the front, 25 years old, newly promoted to fleet commander, still processing the weight of command that had fallen on her shoulders like a planet's gravity. She held a small metal box, simple, unadorned, containing the ashes of the woman who had changed the galaxy in 3 days. My grandmother made me promise two things, Lyra said. Her voice carried through the silent room. First, to restore Earth. Second, to remember what it means to be human. She opened the box. She kept both promises, even when it cost her everything. Now we keep them for her. Lyra walked to the viewport, activated the emergency airlock release. A small portal opened to the vacuum beyond. She tilted the box. Admiral Cassandra Thorne's ashes drifted into space, caught the light from the distant sun, scattered across the void like silver dust. Some would drift. Some would fall to Earth. Eventually, centuries from now, when the atmosphere was breathable again, when the world was green. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, star stuff returning to stars. Lyra closed the portal, sealed the box, turned to face the assembled officers. We have work to do. 500 years of work. Admiral Thorne began it. We finish it. No matter how long it takes, no matter what it costs, we finish it. 300 voices responded as one, yes, Commander. The service ended. The officers dispersed. But Lyra remained, standing alone before the viewport, looking at Earth, trying to see what her grandmother had seen. Trying to understand how you could dedicate your life to something you'd never witnessed completed. The answer came slowly. Over hours. Over days. You didn't have to see the ending to believe in it. You just had to trust that the work mattered, that each small step led somewhere, that the generations after you would continue what you started. Lyra finally understood what Cass had tried to teach her. She returned to the command deck, sat in the admiral's chair for the first time. It felt too large, too heavy, too important, but she sat anyway. Status report, she said. The atmospheric processing chief pulled up displays. First deployment teams are ready, Commander. 12 atmospheric processor stations, each one carrying bacterial colonies specifically engineered to convert carbon dioxide and radioactive particles into oxygen and inert compounds. Timeline: 50 years for measurable atmospheric improvement, 100 for significant change, 200 for breathable air at ground level in limited regions. 200 years. Lyra would be gone long before then. Begin deployment, she ordered. Over the next 3 months, massive stations descended to Earth's surface, each one the size of a city block, each one powered by fusion reactors that would run for centuries, each one releasing trillions of engineered microorganisms into the toxic air. The work had begun. Lyra established her routine: 16 hours of work, 6 hours of sleep, 2 hours reviewing Cass's personal logs, learning from the woman who had carried this burden before her. One entry recorded 2 days before the duel stood out. Cass's face on the screen, tired, already showing signs of the illness she'd hidden from everyone. If you're watching this, Lyra, I'm probably dead, and you're probably sitting in my chair wondering how the hell you're supposed to do this job. The recorded Cass smiled slightly. Here's the secret: you don't do it alone. You build a team, you trust them, you let them carry parts of the burden, and you remember that this isn't about one person's glory, it's about humanity's future. She leaned closer to the camera. You're going to face challenges I can't predict, make decisions I can't help with, but I know you'll make the right choices. Not because you're perfect, but because you're a thorn, and thorns finish what they start. The recording ended. Lyra played it 17 times that first month, drew strength from it when the work seemed impossible, when the progress seemed too slow, when the enormity of 500 years pressed down on her like a physical weight. Year 1 became year 2. Year 2 became year 3. The atmospheric processors worked. Slowly, microscopic organisms multiplied, spread, began the patient work of converting poison to air. The changes were invisible to human eyes, but the instruments detected them. Carbon dioxide levels dropping by 0.01%. Radioactive particle density decreasing by infinitesimal amounts. Progress measured in decimals, in fractions of fractions, but progress nonetheless. Then in year 4, the unexpected visitor arrived. Lyra was reviewing engineering reports when the alert came through. Single ship, entering Sol system, broadcasting Morthani identification codes. She was on the command deck in seconds. Status: One vessel, mid-sized cruiser, no weapons active. They're transmitting a request for communication. Identity. It's Warlord Kravos' commander. He's alone. Lyra's hand moved to the weapons control. Power up defensive systems. If this is another ambush. He's transmitting a message, text only. Says he's here to understand. Says he's unarmed. Says he comes in peace. Lyra studied the tactical display. One ship. Truly alone. No fleet hiding in the outer system. No backup. Just Kravos. Either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Bring him in, under full security, armed escort to a meeting room. I'll see him there. An hour later, Lyra faced the Morthani warlord across a conference table. He looked different from the hollow sheet scene. Older, more scarred. Something in his iron-colored eyes had changed. Something that looked almost like humility. "Commander Thorne," he said. His deep voice filled the small room. "Thank you for seeing me. I'm seeing you because my grandmother saved your life. Don't mistake that for a trust." "I don't." Kravos folded his massive hands on the table. "I came because I needed to understand something. Something I've been trying to comprehend for 4 years. And what's that? Why she saved us. Why she led us into that trap but didn't kill us. Why she risked everything to pull us out of the radiation when she could have simply let us die." Lyra leaned back in her chair. "You want me to explain my grandmother to you? I want to understand humanity. What drives you? What makes you different from every other species I've encountered in 75 years of warfare?" "We're not different. We're just human." "No," Kravos shook his head. "You are different, Ed. I have fought Sylvani fleets, Kethnar battle groups, species across the Concord. All of them fight to win, to dominate, to prove superiority. But your admiral did something I had never seen. She won without destroying. She proved her point without killing. She taught a lesson through mercy." He gestured at the viewport at Earth visible in the distance. "I spent 4 years studying human history. The records we recovered from your homeworld before it burned. I read about your wars, your genocides, your capacity for horrific violence, and I became more confused. Because the species that destroyed itself with nuclear fire 4,000 years ago should not be the same species that saved my fleet in Earth's radiation." "People change," Lyra said quietly. "Species evolve. We learn from our mistakes. In 4,000 years, most species take 10,000, 20,000. Some never learn at all." Kravos leaned forward. "What changed you? What transformed humanity from self-destructive primitives to beings capable of mercy toward enemies?" Lyra thought about Chase, about grandmother Alara, about the promise passed down through generations. "We almost died," she said finally. 47 ships, that's all that remained of billions. 47 ships fleeing into the void with no destination, no plan, just desperate hope. She stood, walked to the viewport. Kravos followed. "In that moment, we had a choice. Carry our hatred forward, build a civilization based on revenge and fear, and the burning desire to make someone pay for what we'd lost, or choose something different. What did you choose? To remember everything, but to let the future be shaped by hope instead of hate. To build a civilization that honored our dead by being better than the version of humanity that killed them." Lyra turned to face the massive warrior. "My grandmother understood that. She knew that if she destroyed your fleet, she'd prove the Concord right. Prove that humans were exactly as dangerous and violent as you all feared. Instead, she proved you wrong. She showed mercy not because you deserved it, but because we needed to be the kind of species that chooses mercy." Kravos was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was softer than Lyra had thought possible. "I came here to offer my help." "What?" "I have engineers, scientists, workers skilled in atmospheric processing and terraforming. I want to assign them to your restoration project as volunteers, for as long as you'll have them." Lyra stared at him. "Why would you do that?" "Because your grandmother saved my life when she should have let me die. Because she taught me that honor isn't just about strength in battle. It's about having the power to destroy and choosing not to. About being strong enough to forgive." He placed one massive hand over his heart in a Morthani gesture of profound respect. "I want to help finish what she started. Not because the Concord ordered me to. Not because of politics or diplomacy. But because I owe her a debt that can never be repaid. This is the only way I know to try." Lyra studied his face, looked for deception, found only sincerity. "The isolation period lasts 500 years. No contact with the Concord. I'm not here representing the Conqueror Accord. I'm here as one warrior honoring another warrior's memory. If you want me to leave, I will. But if you'll let me stay, I'll work alongside your people for as long as I'm useful. For a long moment, Lyra said nothing, processing, calculating, weighing risks against potential benefits. Then she thought about what Cass would do. You can stay, she said finally. Your engineers can help with the atmospheric processors, under human supervision, under our protocols. This is still our project, our terms. Understood completely. And Kravos. Yes, Commander. If you betray this trust, if you do anything to jeopardize this work, I won't be as merciful as my grandmother. Clear. The warlord's expression didn't change. Crystal clear. You won't have cause to regret this decision, Commander Thorne. You have my word as a warrior. Kravos kept his word. For the next 6 years, he lived on a small station in Earth orbit, worked alongside human engineers, offered insights from Morthani terraforming techniques developed over millennia, never asked for special treatment, never demanded recognition, just worked. Lyra watched him carefully at first, waiting for the trick, the betrayal, the moment when the warrior would reveal this had all been a deception. That moment never came. Slowly, grudgingly, she began to trust him, began to see him not as an enemy who had ambushed her grandmother, but as someone genuinely trying to atone. In year 10 it happened. Lyra was conducting a surface inspection, checking atmospheric processor efficiency, walking through a landscape of toxic fog, her environmental suit protecting her from air that would kill an unprotected human in seconds. One of the junior scientists called her over. Commander, you need to see this. She followed him to a sheltered valley between two radiation-scarred hills. The scientist pointed at the ground. Lyra looked down and felt her breath catch. Green, a tiny patch of it, no larger than her palm. Modified grass specifically engineered to survive in high radiation environments. They'd seeded thousands of test plots across the planet. Most had failed, died in soil too poisoned to support life. But this one had survived. This one had grown. Lyra dropped to her knees, pulled it off her glove, touched the green blades with bare fingers. It was soft, alive, real. The first living thing to grow on Earth in 4,000 years. Tears filled her eyes. She was 35 years old. Had spent a decade working toward this moment, had doubted it would ever come. But here it was. Proof, evidence, hope made tangible. Get Kravos, she said, voice thick with emotion. He needs to see this. The warlord arrived within the hour, descended to the surface in his own environmental suit, stood beside Lyra looking at the patch of green grass. It's beautiful, he said quietly. It's a beginning. More than that, Commander, it's a promise kept. Lyra carefully collected several blades, preserved them in a stasis container. Later, she would place them in a memorial case, next to an image of Cassandra Thorne, a reminder that the Admiral had been right, that the work mattered, that patience and dedication could accomplish the impossible. Year 10 became year 20. Year 20 became 50. The changes accelerated. The atmospheric processors had seeded trillions of organisms. They multiplied exponentially, spread across the planet, converted poison to oxygen. The sky began to show hints of blue at high altitude. The toxic fog started to thin in certain regions. The radioactive half-life continued its patient work, deadly isotopes slowly decaying into harmless elements. Lyra aged. Her dark hair showed streaks of gray. Her face developed lines. The work consumed her completely. No family, no personal life, just Earth, just the promise. Kravos aged too. His gray hide grew darker, more scarred. But he remained, worked, never asked to leave. In year 60 exactly, 60 years after Cass's death, Lyra stood on the observation deck. The same viewport, the same chair her grandmother had occupied. She was 85 years old now, still healthy by modern medical standards, could expect another 40 years, maybe 50. But she felt old, tired. The burden of 6 decades of command weighed heavy. Earth turned below, still mostly toxic, but different now, measurably different. Atmospheric oxygen had reached 3%. Radiation levels had dropped by half. Test plots of modified plants were spreading across equatorial regions. Progress. Not enough to declare victory. Not enough to breathe unfiltered air. But progress nonetheless. The door opened behind her. Kravos entered. Moving slower now, his warrior's body showing the inevitable effects of age. He was 145 years old, ancient by Morthani standards. You should be resting, old friend, Lyra said without turning. So should you. They stood together in comfortable silence. Two beings who had spent 6 decades working toward the same goal, who had become unlikely allies, who had learned to trust each other through shared purpose. I'm thinking of retiring, Lyra said quietly. Kravos looked at her sharply. You go, I'm 85, I've served 60 years. That's enough for one lifetime. And who takes command? My protege, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Vale. He's brilliant, dedicated, ready. He's 30 years old, see? I was 25 when I took command. Young commanders learn fast. Lyra smiled slightly. Besides, this work doesn't belong to one generation. It belongs to all of them. Time to let the next group carry the burden. Krivos nodded slowly. What will you do? Stay here, on the Remembrance. Watch. Advise when asked. But let go of direct control. That's very wise. That's very hard. Lyra turned to face him. But it's what my grandmother would do. She understood that holding on too long is just another form of ego. The work is bigger than any one person's need to see it finished. She was a remarkable being, your grandmother. She was, and I'm tired of living in her shadow. Time to let someone else try. The transfer of command happened 3 months later. Simple ceremony. Marcus Vale took the oath. Lyra stepped aside. She remained on the Remembrance, took up residence in a small cabin, offered consultation when requested. Otherwise stayed out of the way. It was strange at first, difficult. Watching others make decisions she would have made differently, biting her tongue when she disagreed, learning to trust as she had been trusted. But gradually it became easier. She spent her days reading, thinking, walking the ship's corridors, talking with Kravos about philosophy and honor and the strange path that had brought them both to this place. Years passed, the work continued. Earth healed incrementally. Lyra reaching 100 years old, then 110. Modern medicine kept her healthy, but her body knew its age. She moved slower, tired easier, spent more time resting. Kravos died at 162, peacefully, in his sleep. They held a memorial service for him, scattered his ashes the same way they'd scattered Cass's, the warrior who had ambushed the admiral and then spent 70 years atoning, who had learned mercy from the enemy he'd tried to kill. Lyra wept at the service, lost a friend, lost a connection to the early days, lost someone who had shared the burden. But the work continued, as it always did, as it always would. Centuries passed, commanders came and went, each adding their contribution, each moving the project forward by incremental degrees. Year 100, year 200, year 300. The sky slowly transformed from toxic brown to pale blue. Oceans began to reform as comets were redirected to bring water. Forests of modified plants spread across continents. Animals were reintroduced from genetic archives. Starting small, insects, fish, birds, building ecosystems from the ground up. Lyra lived to see the first trees planted, died at 125 watching green forests grow on hills that had been barren rock when she was born. Her ashes joined Cass's in the void. 2 thorns, 2 generations, both keeping the promise. Year 400, year 450, year 490. The planet transformed, slowly, patiently. Life returning to a world that had been dead. And finally, in year 500, Earth was ready. Not perfect, not completely healed. Still scarred in places, still recovering. But ready, ready for the ceremony. Ready to declare the work complete enough, ready to breathe. High Admiral Theron Vale stood on Earth's surface. No environmental suit, no air filters, just standing in open air. Breathing atmosphere that had been toxic for 4 millennia. He was 60 years old, Marcus Vale's great-grandson, the latest in a long line of commanders who had dedicated their lives to this single purpose. Around him, thousands had gathered. Humans from across the fleet, descendants of the original 47 ships, representatives from colonies established during the Long Restoration, and guests, invited guests, for the first time in 500 years. Envoy Zalira's descendant, representing the Silvani Collective, a Morthani general, Kravos's great-great-grandson, representatives from all 17 species of the Galactic Concord Court. They had been invited, after 500 years of silence, invited to see what humanity had accomplished. Theron spoke to the assembled thousands. 5 centuries ago, Admiral Cassandra Thorne stood before the Galactic Concord Court and delivered terms. 500 years of isolation. 500 years to restore our world. 500 years to prove we could do it alone. He gestured at the landscape. Green hills rolling to the horizon, blue sky overhead, white clouds drifting in a gentle breeze, birds singing in nearby trees. We kept that promise. We restored our world. We brought life back to a planet that was dead. Not through conquest, not through forcing others to help, but through patience, through dedication, through generations of work. He turned to face the Concord representatives. Admiral Thorne also said we would decide whether you were worthy of knowing us. I believe you've learned. I believe the Concord that exists today is not the Concord that abandoned us 4,000 years ago. He extended his hand toward the Sylvani representative. Welcome to Earth. We accept your apology, not because we've forgotten, but because we've chosen what to do with that memory. The Sylvani stepped forward, took his hand. Thank you. Thank you for showing us what it means to choose hope over hatred. The Morthani general approached next. My great-great-grandfather Kravos left journals. He wrote that serving humanity taught him more about honor than 7 decades of warfare. The Morthani Empire offers eternal friendship. Theron accepted with grace. The ceremony concluded. The crowds dispersed. Officials returned to their ships. But Theron walked alone to a hillside overlooking a valley of green grass and flowing water. At the crest, 2 simple markers stood. White stone, minimal inscription. Admiral Cassandra Thorne, 2463 to 2526. She kept her promise, fleet commander. Lyra Thorne, 25, Awasset to 2626. She finished the work. Theron knelt between the graves, placed his hand on the grass that grew thick and healthy over them. We did it, he said quietly. 500 years, but we did it. The wind rustled through nearby trees, carried the scent of flowers, of life. He stood slowly. Thank you, both of you, for showing us the way. 500 years later, 1,000 years total since the return, a young girl named Arya walked through New Alexandria, the city built on the shores of the restored Mediterranean, where wasteland had become blue water and green coastline. She was 12 years old, dark hair, curious eyes, a student on a field trip to the historical sites. Her class visited the Admiral Thorne Memorial, a park on a hill overlooking the sea. At its center, the original grave markers preserved. Surrounded now by gardens and walking paths, an old guide met them there, white-haired, kind-eyed, descendant of the restoration workers. Welcome to the Thorne Memorial, he said. Who can tell me who Admiral Cassandra Thorne was? Hands shot up. Everyone knew. Every child learned the story. She brought us home. She saved the Morthani even though they attacked her. She started the restoration. The guide smiled. All true, but I want to tell you something they don't always teach in school. Something important. The children gathered around. Admiral Thorne was 63 years old when she came to Earth. She knew she would die long before seeing this planet healed. She knew she would never walk in green forests or swim in clean oceans. He gestured at the grave marker. But she did it anyway. She started the work. She passed it to the next generation, and that generation passed it to the next, and on, for 500 years, until finally the work was complete. Arya raised her hand. Why would she do that? Why work for something she'd never see? The old guide knelt down to her level, looked her in the eyes. Because some things are bigger than one lifetime child. Some promises take generations to keep. And the people who start those things, who plant those trees, they're the most important people in history. Not because they finished, but because they had the courage to begin. He stood, led the children to the edge of the memorial, pointed out across the landscape. Everything you see, the green hills, the blue sky, the birds and trees and flowers, all of it exists because people 500 years ago chose to start something they'd never finish, chose to believe in a future they'd never witness, chose to work for your generation instead of their own comfort. Arya looked at the grave markers, tried to imagine someone dedicating their entire life to a future they'd never see. It seemed impossible, seemed like too much sacrifice. But here was the evidence. Green grass growing, blue sky above, living proof that it had worked. After the class left, Arya stayed behind, sat on a bench near the graves, thought about the admiral who had died 1,000 years ago, thought about the promise, thought about what it meant to work for future generations. An idea formed, small, uncertain, but growing. When she returned home that evening, Arya asked her parents for tree seeds. She wanted to plant something in their garden, something that would grow tall long after she was gone, something her own grandchildren might someday sit beneath. They gave her the seeds, helped her plant them. And on a hillside park in New Alexandria, Admiral Cassandra Thorne rested beneath green grass and blue sky. Her promise kept, her work complete, her legacy living in every child who learned that some things matter more than one lifetime. The trees grew, the planet healed, the generations continued, and humanity remembered. Not just the pain, not just the abandonment, not just the 4,000 years of exile. They remembered the choice. The moment when they could have become monsters and chose instead to be human. The moment when vengeance was possible and mercy was chosen. The moment when an admiral looked at a dead world and decided to make it live again. That was the legacy. That was the promise. That was what it meant to be human.